This is for the purposes of our video audience here, because I want to make sure everybody knows what we're supposed to be doing here as we get prepped for doing the path/person-centered plan. The first thing that we obviously are going to be doing today is preparing the charts, the wall materials that we'll be using for tomorrow. And we'll have that later on towards the end of the video. But we're going to have to also, one of the things that we did that is not on the video is that we spent about 2 hours this morning reviewing the assessments. Two assessments in particular, or two sets of assessments. One was the risk assessments that were chosen to be used in this case for the gentleman whose path is going to be held tomorrow, and the motivation, tension, and resistance assessment. And we went through it and we looked at where were the points of tension, where were the points of resistance, where were the things that were really important to staff, where were the things that are really important to the person who's going to have their path tomorrow. And then we made sure that we got all of those things incorporated, thinking about how we're going to include those in the discussion tomorrow. So those things are going to be included in one of these charts in one way, shape, or another as we prepare for the path tomorrow. Because those things came up, scored at levels that caused a red flag in one way, shape, or another. We took a look at the stuff on motivation, tension, and resistance, and risk. We have developed some ideas of the key questions that need to be involved in the discussions tomorrow. The path plan, which is the part where we're all sitting around and talking and putting stuff up on the walls and writing and all that kind of good stuff, is the part that establishes the profile of the person. It tells us who they are, what's important to them, what's important for us to be concerned about regarding the services and supports that he's going to need, and those kinds of things. If you're watching this video, that means that you're also aware that there is a packet of information called the Guidelines for Person-Centered Planning and PATH. And the last 2 pages of that handout, of that packet, are the headings that go onto those charts, onto the stuff that's on the walls here. And we will go through those headings and talk about what do they mean and what needs to be on them and those kinds of things. But that's also written down there. But one of the things I just want to put out there as a tip for you now is that all that information of the concerns regarding family relationships or regarding risk, regarding whatever it is that you found off of the motivation, tension stuff, if you're not actually going to put it onto the posters as one of the things that we already know, then you also want to make yourself a little pen note, written small enough that you can see it, but nobody else really does notice it, to remind you to ask the questions about the things that were kind of up in the air. For instance, on independence and self-determination, he scored the barriers as a 7, and so did the staff. But we're thinking that there's 2 very different reasons for those barriers, or potentially very different reasons, where he might be looking at it, the barrier as just being the fact that he's in this program, so he doesn't get to make choices, and he's got all kinds of limitations on his, what he's allowed to do. Where the staff are looking at those barriers as a 7, which is pretty high, being related to the fact that he has a substance abuse history, he has a mental health history, he's got a traumatic brain injury, he's functionally developmentally disabled in his functioning in several ways, and so that there are some different kinds of concerns that get us to those points. And so while one of them is important to him, meaning important for him to be able to make these decisions and to to learn how to do that stuff, we're having some pretty strong concerns, and so we have some important for him kinds of conversations that need to happen regarding the same things. And that's just an example of the kinds of work that we're gonna have. One is that when you're actually doing, the prep of the charts, use lots of color, draw, make the heading pretty good size, pretty big. You don't have to do it all across the top. You can do it down the side. You can do it on a diagonal across the middle of it. The idea is that when people walk into the room, when Stephen walks into the room, or whoever is coming in to do their path, what they're seeing is dramatically different from what they're used to seeing. And that's for the benefit of staff too, because we don't want people to get back, to go into the mode of doing things the way we've always done them. So this is kind of a little bit of a shocker, a little bit of effort to say, okay, yeah, this is not old school. So lots of colors, big, bold, bright, beautiful, that kind of stuff. And when you're actually filling out the charts during the time that the meeting is actually going on, you don't have to worry about being an artist. You really don't. I mean, you can use all kinds of simple symbols. Like the heart represents love. A box and 2 circles underneath it can represent car. A box with a triangle on the top of it can represent house. A box with a triangle on top of it with a cross on top of that is a church. So it doesn't have to be fancy. But the other thing is that we're trying not to put things into bullet lists so that it doesn't just become another, listing of things. We're really trying to get it to be as much of a free flow conversation as we possibly can. And in most of these kinds of situations, we try and do it so that there's one person who's what we call the graphic facilitator, the person doing the drawing, and somebody who is the process facilitator, which is the person asking all the questions. And then the graphic facilitator kind of serves as the backup for the process facilitator. So if there's something that doesn't make sense, or you think maybe somebody's misunderstanding something or whatever, you can help cue them in, but you can ask the question as the graphic facilitator to the group. Do you mean this? Or I'm a little confused about what needs to be done here. How you want me to capture this? You try and don't try and write whole sentences, because that gets really time consuming and it bogs you down. But you want to try and use their own words. If they have something that's really, really important to them, that's really a big deal, not only do you want to make it bigger than the other stuff, that's when you may capture a sentence, or a part of a sentence, but most of the time you're just trying to capture the feeling, the words, a couple key phrases, a couple key words in a phrase or something along those lines. The next one is the important to and important for. And the part of important to and important for is that we got important across the top, the 2 and the 4 are divided here. And the whole thing, because we're going to get a couple seconds of teaching, that when you do this page, is you talk about trying to find the balance. That's why there's the little triangle and the level, is that you want it to be balanced between what he wants and what we need to have happen for him. What are the things that we know or that we have as far as risks?
The fact that he has poor judgment.
Okay. Now, how can we say has poor judgment in a non-insulting way?
Right, that's what I was like,
Of
yeah.
things that we are
Poor,
concerned
I
about.
was like,
Things that we are concerned about, how can we say that we're concerned about his poor judgment without saying it's in an insulting way? Can we say decision making? We're concerned about decision making.
Yeah, that sounds.
Okay, we're concerned about is substance. I skipped a space because I'm going to use a different color in between there. Substance abuse. Okay,
So we're going to go ahead and fill it in now?
we're doing some of it now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because this is things that we know that we are concerned about. That's why we did all the review of the assessments
Right.
in advance. Every one of those things that scored high for him, and when we say scored high is, well, I've numbered them off to the side here. Every one of those things is stuff that he has told us. So what are those things that he's told us?
Rejection, what is this, order.
Okay, what I want to put in there, avoid rejection.
Yeah, avoid.
Okay, so we've got all the stuff on the assessment done. Okay? All right, now, we're going to go ahead and do some of the important fours real quickly. What's important for him from our perspective? All you got to do is think about these things and translate it over to here. I think the first thing we're concerned about is his health and safety.
How do you start it? What do you say to start the whole thing?
Well, we're here to develop a path. You can say, we're here trying to do the first part of the person-centered plan. The first part of doing a good person-centered plan is for us to get to know Stephen in a way that we haven't known Stephen necessarily, and for us to have an honest conversation about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, what's important to him and what's important for him.